Hello, and welcome to the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Mignott, CEO of the experience communications agency DFlash. Each week, I bring in another really amazing business leader who can tell us how business is reset in their industry. This week, I'm super excited to have Marcia Mitchell, Badass VC from FS Venture Capital here in New York City, to tell us all about her amazing career path, leading her to now being at one of the top venture capital firms in the city of New York. So Marcia, we're so happy to have you. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Laura. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So every interview I do, I ask the very same first question. And it's always exciting to me how everyone's first question sort of dovetails into the second question I ask. And I'm sure it will be the same for you. So, Marcia, what was your first job?
My first job was a babysitter, which seems pretty straightforward. You know, like you're a kid and there's other kids in your neighborhood. And if you're old enough, you know, and other parents trust you to watch their kids while they go to the movies or go out to dinner, you get asked to babysit. But, you know, what was really cool for me was my mom encouraged me to get Red Cross certified so that I would know, you know, how to deal with maybe a baby choking or a toddler or like, you know, the fire protocols and all these different things. So I definitely made sure to market that skill when I was looking for babysitting jobs. But yeah, the first time I got paid to do something was to babysit.
So it's interesting that, again, this is like, 18 for 18 in terms of the number of episodes I've done. And same thing, the very first job that you do oftentimes looks a lot like the job that you do when you get to be talking to me on the podcast. Because now, what do you do in your real life today?
Well, now I work in VC at FF Venture Capital, and I basically do everything from helping source deals to helping do cap table analysis and population and supporting portfolio companies. So if anything maps closer to babysitting, maybe it's supporting portfolio companies, but they're functioning very well without, you know, my interference. It's just every once in a while they call, you know, as a sounding board or, you know, some advice basically. And you know, I wouldn't want to sort of be reductive and say that it's like babysitting, but I guess it is in a way. If there's an emergency situation, we often come in with funding or, you know, experience, perspective, and try to help as best we can.
Well, yeah, that's kind of where I thought I saw it going, because it's not so much that you were, quote unquote, just a babysitter, but you went a step above and beyond and said, I need to get certified. I need to be able to market those skills. And then I'm able to sort of be more than your average babysitter. And I think when talking about being a VC, it's not just about providing capital, it's providing all of these additional things that you can help to give to your founders so that they can be the best they can be. So it actually is an interesting parallel between the two.
Oh, that's right.
See, I'm always right about this. So, all right, trust me. So how in the world do you even get to be a VC and, you happen to be a Black woman? Like, that's magical unicorn status. How does that happen?
Yeah, I think I've always kind of worked in obscure fields, I think, or worked in areas where it's hard to get in, but I somehow like manage or like end up there. I guess I started on that path when I was a little kid. I think I told you on the panel, but, you know, I saw footage of the trading floor, the New York Stock Exchange, and thought, you know, at a very young age that that's where I belonged, which is kind of funny given my personality type, but it still makes sense to me. I mean, I've always wanted to be an investor, and the pace of investing, what the skills that it takes of analysis, both like quick and deep analysis, understanding people, you know, and using lots of different disparate data points to pull together a strategy, watching for patterns. All of those things make you, you know, having a great gut and a strong intuition, I think sometimes, and luck, you know, makes you a great investor. And I'm still honing those skills, but I was thinking about creating a few different products, like, you know, tech products, apps, let's say. And I found myself wanting to go back to school to shore up some of my understanding of how the startup ecosystem works. So I got a master's in technology commercialization from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. And that was basically like a laundry list of all the skills that you would need to either start a company, or I realized maybe halfway through to become an investor. And I saw an opportunity because, yes, you're absolutely right. Being a woman of color gives me a very unique perspective in this industry because there are so few of us. And I believe that it gives me access to lots of different groups of people who may feel more comfortable sharing their ideas with me and growing with an investor like me. And so I figured I could make a lot more impact on humanity, I guess, by being on this side of the table. And I realized that I had, a lot of skills that matched very well to that job, and just felt like I almost felt compelled into it. I had a master's project that I pulled together spring semester last year, I guess, and I used some of the funding to go to venture capital focused events, and just like put myself into the ecosystem directly, going and seeing pitch competitions, going to, women in investing events, and met a couple different female investors who gave me a lot of great guidance, and then also gave me the heads up that FFVC was hiring, and they, had nothing but great things to say about the team there. And so, one thing led to another, and I ended up on the team at FF, and it's been amazing. I think working your network is super important. I think sometimes it's kismet, like, you end up, I could go on and on about like all the different things that I've done in the past, but I think every step has led me to here, like a diverse set of experiences, the desire to help people. And like I said before, like the ability to analyze, see patterns, and then act and be empowered to do so is all what led me to be here.
It's really cool because I've had an opportunity to meet dozens and dozens of VCs, over the years of working in this business. And, I always find it interesting that the women who I come across always come at it from a much more empathetic side of the universe, whereby like you help people. And and I think that's refreshing to hear, because a lot of it, it's these tech bros, and okay, well, John needed a job, so John's dad hooked him up with Billy's father, and now he's working at this VC, and so now he's just going to be out making all this money. And with female VCs, and like I said, magical unicorn status of a Black female VC, you all, you're coming at it from such a more, not even strategic place, because you can actually, you want to be able to help people in a way that's meaningful, as opposed to it just being, I want my 10x exit. How have you, I'm sure having come across a lot of those kinds of special types of VCs, when you come across those types of folks, how do you deal?
Yeah, I think those desires have to be concurrent in order to be successful. Like the 10x exit, and sort of not necessarily chasing that, but keeping that in mind. Because the other wonderful side of VC is that we have investors too. We have people who entrust us with funds to then invest in companies that we believe in and manage those investments. And that's a fiduciary duty of ours, right? And so like when we know what their expectations are, obviously to get returns. And I think that part of it is also very motivating for me. Like having someone, I mean, obviously it's not, FFVC is run by three partners, John Frankel, Alex Katz, and AJ Plotkin, and they have obviously a lot of the control of how, we invest, et cetera. They take into consideration, almost everything that the junior members of the team have to say, because they've got a lot of experience, but, we've got a different perspective. So it kind of is this like wonderful working relationship on that level. But at the end of the day, we have to get returns and we have to do well. And I think that motivates you to picking teams that you believe in, not just for the current product, but for what they could do in the future, how they can pivot, what, how well they take direction, I think is also very important. So when you say, like, I hear you say, you might encounter people who are really out for returns. I think what I've noticed from being in the industry for this amount of time is that the people who have been around the longest entertain a really good balance of helping people and wanting to help people, but also being focused on returning the fund and making sure that, you're completing your fiduciary duty to your LPs, your limited partners. So it's definitely a balance of both. But I feel like when you lead with, I want these people to do well. Like, I want these people and their families and the ecosystem, and other people are going to get jobs. Like, there's so much to be gotten. I mean, maybe it's an abundance mindset, but there's so much to be gotten and so many rewards to be reaped when people do well financially. So it's like, it's almost like it's just a melange of all of those things together.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful way of saying it, because it's like, if you invest in people for real, your
Mm-hmm.
return will end up being so much more successful.
Totally.
And you'll end up with people who can, their first company is successful, their second company is successful, their third company is successful, because you're investing in that whole person and lifting them up. So how does one, because also for you, it's like you took this very sort of specific path to get there with regard to like going and get your master's. What were the steps where you're like, okay, I want to become a VC now. I've done a lot of interesting things previously, but now this is the step I want to take. What were those first steps you took in order to apply, get in, network? Like what were those sort of kind of specific things? Because I know that a lot of women out there listening, especially, are like, I want to be like Marcia. I want to be like Arlen Hamilton. I want to be like Tony Woodward. Like, how do I even begin to do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting how a couple of strange interactions or strange happenstance things happen to get you to where you go. But also, yes, like preparation is a big part of it. I majored in economics at school, at university, and then I worked on the trading floor for a little while. I got that experience. I got the understanding of, the language, how to speak the language more or less, which is not, a do or die. Like, coming from maybe a non-traditional path is also, which I kind of have in a way. Like, I'm sort of a hybrid of a non-traditional and a traditional background. But I think, or what I did, one day I got into an Uber pool. A friend of mine I was visiting in Brooklyn suggested I just like hop in this Uber pool. I didn't even know what Uber pool was. I didn't realize that you could like share a ride. This was a couple years ago, so not that long. But I ended up getting in, and when they picked up another person, she turned out to be a female VC who had just moved from San Francisco to New York City. So I'm like halfway through getting my master's. I'm talking about like, being in the city and talking about whatever. And, we shared this with each other and we exchanged information. And so she was kind enough and generous enough to like take a call with me a couple weeks later and just run down everything that it took to be a great VC. And she had recently graduated from her master's program as well and gotten this job and had come from an operator side. So she just gave me a lot of confidence to look at my skill set, which was, there's some like mathematical and financial background that's been strengthened by getting this master's. There's the dexterity in terms of being able to speak engineer, like being able to interface with technical teams and help them through strategy. And the same to be said for sales teams and how to, I was a management consultant for a while and a tech consultant. And I think that perspective is super helpful when you're sitting on boards and you're advising startups through different twists and turns of running the business. And then, like that being female was a great sort of standpoint, especially now. The timing is just really great because we're looking for more diverse perspectives. And I think the smart firms are looking to just diversify their team. So what was important for me was realizing my experience was valuable, whatever it was, like we can talk a little bit more some time, but I went from the trading floor to fashion modeling to tech consulting, back to grad school, and then out to VC. So it's like, that sounds very non-traditional. Most people I think they're going to, a target school like at Harvard or Princeton or what have you. They're going straight to an MBA program, or maybe they have a couple years out, or even some of the sort of senior investors have had large exits of companies that they started themselves. So like they might have a startup, a software startup that gets acquired by a Google or a Microsoft, and then they become an investor because they have, amassed a certain amount of personal wealth. And then of course the experience to back it up. So they're much more likely to be seen as authorities on, what can happen at a company like that. And I think for me, it's more that I'm, getting into this game sort of young in comparison to some people who when they get into it, and with, a very normal amount of financial wealth. It's not, I don't have billions of dollars to invest in startups, but I have, the desire, again, to be helpful and to sort of apply my skill sets and apply, my understanding of the industry as a whole to be able to help these companies. So I would say to anybody who's interested in it, like, take stock of what you have in terms of your experience and knowledge and understanding, figure out if there's an opportunity to, increase that or ameliorate that in some way by maybe getting back to school or spending more time with other investors, and then just literally put yourself in a position to be noticed and or to communicate with people who are already on the scene. So, I bought tickets to San Francisco. I put myself into a conference there. I bought, train tickets to Boston and went to a female investor conference there. Or I emailed the organizers and say, hey, I'm not an accredited investor and I don't have $300K in the bank, but I'm very interested in becoming an investor and I'd love to attend just to like meet different people. And they said, sure, especially, I think the best hack is being a student because people you get away with a lot. People are like much more friendly to you when you're still in school. So use that and then show up, and have something to offer. I've got a few undergrads and grad students who send me deals, and then they ask for an internship, and I'm pretty psyched on hiring somebody like that because they're already making, sure that they get the mechanics of the industry, which is, awesome. You're shortening your learning curve and you're already being additive. So I think just putting yourself in there, becoming, a resource for people who are working and just go for it.
Yeah. Thank you for being practical, because I think oftentimes we hear that it's this very difficult insular world, and it's not about that. It's kind of what I always talk about, the fact that you're essentially one degree away from the people that you need to meet, and the way that you're able to do that is if you actually put yourself in those places where those connections can actually happen. So whether that's being somewhat remotely friendly in a Lyft or an Uber pool, or it's calling to get a discounted ticket for an event. Like, I can't tell you how many times I tell people all the time about this. It's like, ask, can I help and volunteer? What kind of a discounted ticket so I can at least be in the room? Because if you're not in the room, you're on the menu. So you gotta be and putting yourself in those places where people can get to see you and then repeatedly see you, because like your face becomes a person. They're like, oh wait, I saw you at this conference. I saw you at that conference.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the deal here? Why is it I should know about you? And that, I think, is oftentimes where we hear from folks saying that like they don't know how to bust through these doors. It's like, put yourself out there and not take no for an answer, but do it in a way that doesn't come across as you being a psycho either.
Right. Or a charlatan. Like, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just like blowing smoke and people would be looking up, my credentials and being like, who is this Marcia Mitchell person? Like, what does she have in the industry? So again, I took some of the funding that was granted to me during my master's program for the special course, Managing on the Edge, and put together a budget and an event for a conference, which I titled Women of Color, conference. And it was basically just an opportunity for entrepreneurial women of color in the surrounding schools to RPI to come for a day of, knowledge. I had 4 different speakers talking about, how to draft a founder's agreement. I had a lawyer from Phillips Lytel, Rich Honan, he's amazing. I had Kate Cartini from Chloe Capital come and talk about how to find investors, how to get in contact with investors, and then what to say to them once you find them. I had the head of GE Digital, which is located near my school, come and talk to those who might be, they're engineers and they're entrepreneurial, but they don't want to like leave GE and start their own company, but they see that there's a product team forming and that they could join that product team and be additive in that way and be entrepreneurial, and so how do you do that? He runs those teams. So he gave them the inside scoop. And then, a keynote speaker who just spoke about the changing economy and the focus on, female vision and impact, and how that is sort of a calling for us to get involved. It's not just necessarily an option. It's literally like in any way that you can, like, heed the call to action. Let's go. And here's how you can apply yourself. So it was just like, that was an opportunity. They all did it for free. I had, funding for like food, and the space was free, and I had a sponsor. So it's just kind of like pulling those things together and acting as if, like, I was basically acting as if I'm already an investor, I'm already like an accelerator, which is just little old me getting my master's. It wasn't like a whole team. I had a classmate of mine help me with some of the admin part of it, but it was a great opportunity to show my chops, to say, look, now that I'm actually with a company, with this expanded budget, I could put this event on again and create an amazing opportunity for deal flow for us, or, just an opportunity for these women to get educated. I saw the opportunity because I was getting so highly educated in terms of all these things. And I felt like, how can I share this knowledge with more people? Like, how can I compact my master's in technology commercialization into a day? And so I just went about doing that. And then when people saw me, or I would send them that link, then they could immediately see what my North Star is, which is to get more women and women of color involved in this ecosystem, like now. So that's, that kind of qualified what I was doing. And then it made it much easier for me to get entree into the industry.
Awesome. Thank you. Because like I said, I mean, like that's, I just find, I'm always about the action. Like, stop talking about how difficult it is for women and women of color and how blah, 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 blah.
Let's go.
It's just get it done. It's like, I was fortunate enough to be in Essence, about a month ago, and it was about like how I've put more Black women on stage than anybody else the last 8 years. And for me, it was sort of weird that was the name of the title, because for me, I just said, I have access to build these really amazing events. I'm going to go and find the best people to come talk about this. And by the way, if that's a bunch of amazing Black women, that's because they're the best.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, just put it out there that this is how you can build things. And who are the people who are doing the really awesome things? Have a more diverse network, hustle in a more authentic way. Instead of it's like, go, never sleeping, blah, blah. Like, no, it's like, it's more about like, how do I get into a conference in San Francisco? And I know that the conference in San Francisco is going to be one of the 4 women of color who are going to be there. So guess what? Everyone's going to come talk to me.
Exactly.
Because they're like, how did you get here? Who are you? Blah, blah, blah. Like,
yeah.
That's how I built my business. Like, literally, that's how one of my clients, same deal. How he kept seeing me at conferences. He's like, finally, who are you? What do you do? I need to know who you are. And it's like, but yeah, like that's the thing that I think that is so necessary for people to understand, that there isn't some giant Rubik's Cube. It's about action.
Yeah, getting in the thick of it, like dipping your toe, like walking in and wading in, because I've already noticed, and like I have to say thank you so much for having me at the Fly Female Founders event last week. It was super helpful in terms of like motivating me and focusing me and making me realize that there's still a lot of people who don't have a lot of the answers that they are looking for, more insight into this industry and how to get their businesses funded, et cetera. But it was also just a great way for me to, I don't know, I guess it's kind of corny, but like build my own confidence in being in front of a room full of people and talking about this, because I often forget, and maybe it's lazy thinking, but I often forget that it is so rare for me to be here, because I wanted myself to be here and I put myself here, and I don't discount anybody who's tried, but it just kind of feels like, oh, like I woke up one day and like, here I am. And now people are asking me to come and speak about it. And that hasn't worn off, and I doubt that it will for some years. But, I'm always super grateful to be put in that position, because then I quickly realize that there's lots of people who are getting value from seeing me, whether they're older than me, younger than me, not necessarily in the startup ecosystem or what have you. It just, representation is so important, and it's so helpful to see yourself. I look at like AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and I'm just like, she's there, she's in Congress, she has a very similar face, bone structure, skin color to people, like to me and my family, and that makes me feel like I can be there. And it's invaluable, that experience, to see somebody like you put up, on a stage to talk about their experience, and you can learn from them. It's great.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, it's it really is, if you can see it, you will be it, and you take such good ownership of it, and being able to be in those places where you don't normally see people, and then folks see your photo and go, oh wait, she was at that thing, really cool, I could probably do that too, and it's necessary, and I think as the winds of change in terms of politics and the economy's change, The more that we can see women of color up on stage because they're amazing at what they do, and it's not, oh, well, because you needed one woman. No, because we wanted a really awesome, badass VP, and that's why we got Marcia. So there.
Sure. So there. Amazing.
Not invested. So question for you. So you're now on the other side of the table and folks are coming to you to ask for money. What are the kind of 3 or 4 main things before they sit down and have a meeting with you, these funders should know?
If you say it one more time, I'm sorry.
So if I'm a startup founder and I've been able to schedule a meeting with you, so I have 20 minutes with you, what should I be asking? What should I sort of have in my toolbox of things should I know ahead of time before I sit down with a meeting with you or any other VC?
Got it. Okay, great. Yeah, but if you've gotten to the meeting, we are curious about, the concept. We've probably done a little bit of vetting on you, and we're ready to hear about the product. And I think having a 1 or 2 sentence description of your product is so valuable, because that is the fastest way to lose our attention, is to have a meandering explanation of what the hell you're selling, because it just wastes time and it's confusing and it makes it seem a little bit dubious. So having that explanation, 1, 2 sentences, bingo. VCs are like the most impatient people not necessarily impatient, but like in real time, they don't have a lot of time. So just let us know what you're doing quickly. And then having your business model clearly delineated is like the hack. Like I've noticed that when you can clearly explain the unit economics of what you're selling, what the costs are to you, how much it costs to acquire a customer, like lifetime value of that customer, those few numbers really do show us you've done a lot of your homework. Your model is, whether it's ambitious or not, at least you've put some thought into it to show, here's how we're going to be cranking over the next 3, 6, 9, 18 months. And here are the sort of blips or different turns we're going to take in terms of revenue because of, XYZ part of our business model. So demonstrating that you clearly know how you're going to be making money, either in the immediate, right now or in the immediate future as you get more funding, is just, that's like the point of the call. I mean, the point of the call is to get to know the team, but also to like understand your business model. And I see that the teams who have that speech down get further along in the process. So then to that point, understanding, having your revenue, what you're projecting for the current year and for a couple of years forward. Obviously, no one has the crystal ball, but if you can sort of have that calculated out, it helps us to do our calculus on our side, which is like not super complex, but it just is helpful for us. Knowing who's your competition. I mean, saying you don't have competition is cute, but like we know that like somebody's going to be there to challenge you, which is great. Having, incumbents or even challengers in the market is stimulating for you to have a better business. I think like accurate and good competition is always good. And then knowing what the adjacencies are. So like, are there partnerships? Are there companies that you can sidle yourself up to and maybe eventually be an acquisition target for? Like knowing those and being able to talk through those is very exciting for us, because it means later on down the line, there's going to be maybe an exciting event. And then what kind of help you need, besides money. Who are you looking for? If it's us, if it's FF, because we've got like a deep tech, cyber, or insurtech expertise, that's awesome. If it's not us, and maybe you're looking for somebody to be a strategic in another area that we don't cover, then we'll happily connect you with people, especially if you're good. If you're good people, then we'll connect you with our network, because every investment is not necessarily for each firm. Sometimes it just makes more sense to go with a different team who has more expertise there. But if you're looking for us to be additive, in terms of just money, then that's not really, what we do. We like to be hands-on and not to be like micromanaging whatsoever, but really to just be helpful.
Awesome. So it's do your homework, know who your competitors are, know your business model, understand your revenue, and and ask the questions about and have an answer to what do you want question. Because I think oftentimes folks just think, oh, as long as I got $100,000, I can go run this business, and we all know that that's not the case, no matter what industry that you're in.
Venture capital money is expensive capital. It really is. And so, this might lead to another question, but like knowing when companies come in and ask us gracefully or not, who is FFVC and what do you have to offer us? I have so much respect for them, because you're entering into a long-term relationship. Some people call it like a marriage. I don't know anything about marriage, so I won't say. But it sounds like you got to be very careful and make sure that your goals align and that you have transparency and understanding of each other and all those things. And so you don't want to walk into that with just anybody just because they've got money, for instance. And that's kind of what, FF has obviously money to invest in, these amazing companies, tech-enabled companies, but we want to make sure that the relationship is reciprocal and that it's strong and that there's confidence and like trust. And when the company sort of puts the ball back in our court, I think that's a really good sign that they're looking out for themselves, and I appreciate that.
Awesome. So this kind of leads into my next question. So when is the right time to come knocking on Marcia's door? And when is the time to be sort of like, well, actually, you should bootstrap this, or you should get a small business loan, or do equity crowdfunding? Like what's kind of like the kind of golden single that like now would be a good time for you to go talk to Marcia?
Yeah, I think it varies, like depending on what you're doing. I think right now, being at FF, I can see clearly that customer traction, but aside from after the concept and prototype, is really important. Even if it's something that's experimental, like drone technology, if you've got a government contract or a conversation going with, a large aerospace company, for instance, like that's a leading indicator that you're onto something really great. And I think getting that early and bringing that to us at that point makes sense. You've got a dollar value assigned to the contract. You've got an average contract value that is attractive and that makes sense and that's sustainable, and that can grow. That all looks like, the portents for future growth. So I also feel like before you even get to like institutional funding, you can't discount a strong friends and family round at the beginning, before you've gone to VC. I realize, few people have a personal network of people that they can go to for $50,000 or $100,000. Like I said before, some people have had prior exits and they start new companies and they take some of that money, and that's not everybody. And I get that. But I think being able to show that you can raise a robust friends and family round is another early indicator of being able to successfully pull off the rest of the business. We tend to shy away from joining crowdfunded raises, and I don't have the data necessarily on long-term efficacy of that tactic, but any opportunity to raise non-dilutive capital is favorable. So if you're getting into even like the Acela prizes and the Techstars world, they're not taking huge amounts of equity, and so that presents a great opportunity for you to get funding and not be giving away much of your company before you've even really grown. One founder I know has been making the rounds of lots of competitions and raking in checks by winning them, and that thing doesn't last forever, right? But like 50K is 50K, and or 35 or 25 or 15, whatever it is, it can go a long way when you haven't raised a round with VCs yet. And so I think having some money in the bank and having a really strong strategy as to how you plan to spend it and conserve it, and looking at the different points in which revenue is going to be coming in, you're chasing down those enterprise contracts or however it is your business model is set up. That shows us that you're all about it. We have a company we invested in recently that's applying and using some of their time to apply for a national grant, and it's a large amount of money. And I'm sort of in awe of this person. They're building a company, but they're also like working to put together this really amazing, long, robust report about their work so that they can chase even more funding. And I just think that shows you that like they're really engaged and trying, and that's all you can ask for with a company.
Awesome. I think I think there's so many misconceptions out there about what you have to do and the steps of the process. And I think breaking it down into like simple, digestible chunks like you just did there is going to be immensely helpful to our listeners. So my last question for you is, what would you tell Marcia, who's about 25 years old, in terms of what you wish you knew then that you know now?
Wow.
I realize that might have been like 2 years ago, but still.
I know, hashtag 10-year challenge. You're young. You are young. I was modeling, so 25, for a fashion model, my nickname was Grandma. And I know that's like disturbing for people, but like that's just the truth. Like a lot of girls start at 14.
Mm-hmm.
I started at 19-ish and then full time at 21. So I had like a tiny window of opportunity to like earn significant money, you know, as a professional fashion model. And I did the best I could, but I didn't realize how young I was at the time. Like I was looking at these younger girls and thinking like, oh man, I'm so old. So you're young. Every decision you make may not be perfect, quote unquote, but it's yours. And live your life, hon. Like just live it up. You're doing great. That's what I tell 25-year-old Marcia.
That's awesome. I think no, and you know, that's like an awesome way to end this conversation, because I think that, you know, that's a really refreshing and delightful thing. I've had now a chance to talk to you twice in a where it's just like I just appreciate the lightness and the airiness of you, because I think.
Oh, thank you, Laura.
Because look, you're smart as hell. You know what you're doing. You got this. But I think, you know, what's really genuine and awesome is your authenticity about what you do and the passion with which you explain it in ways that, again, is just refreshing to people. And I think, you know, as you grow and become like, you know, the queen of the $1 billion exits, I'm sure.
Thanks, I'll remember that.
Yes.
On the dark days.
Yeah, totally. That it's just gonna, you know, I don't see that you're gonna change, and I think that's just it's just great to see. So I'm thrilled to have you join us on the Reset podcast. So thank you so much.
I'm honored. Thank you so much, Laura. It's always a pleasure speaking with you.
This has been fun. So 1 sec, hit stop recording.